Carbs do not make you fat. Fat does not make you fat. You eating overnight does not make you fat. You just overall consuming too many calories. Now that's what makes you fat. You already know what this is. It is Trehunna, and the topic of the day is carbohydrates. If you follow me for some time, you already know that I'm somebody who advocates for a lower carb diet. Now, I'm not an advocate for a ketogenic diet. That's two totally separate camps. I want you to have better quality carbs. But now, because of cognitive dissonance and because of the generation that we grew up in, a lot of people demonize carbs. Today, what we're going to talk about is when you should incorporate a little bit more carbs into your diet and the absolute top 5 carbs you should avoid if your goal is to lose weight and just to have overall better health.
Hey guys, my name is Michelle,
Anita,
Sarah, Leah,
Peyton,
Talia,
Jazz,
Marquita.
I'm a physique.
Products.
Period. You love to see.
Absolute number one offender when it comes to carbs is bread. Enriched bread, bleached bread. You do not want to have bread on an average day. Why? Just think about what bread makes you do. When you go to that restaurant, you had that loaf of bread come out, you've been looking at it, you see the butter, you're like, ooh, that bread look kind of tasty. So you just take a little piece, you eat it, then you realize, ooh,
that bread was kind of tasty. Let's take another piece.
you eat it. Then you think, ooh,
These appetizers looking kind of good.
so now you order some appetizers, and then now you're like, you know what, I know I'm on this weight loss regimen, but why not get a drink? So ultimately, a lot of people do not know what bread does when it comes to your brain and your mindset. It actually down regulates the functionality of your parietal lobes. This helps you make better choices. This is a part of your decision making in your prefrontal cortex. So because your judgment is going out the window and because you have a lack of discernment because you had some bread, now you're more susceptible to make not the greatest choices. So if you're somebody who is on a weight loss regimen, it's just in your best interest just to avoid it overall, right? But not only that, if you're having regular bread, enriched bread, bleached bread, the bread that you can have that's sitting in your pantry for a month, and you're probably asking yourself, how in the hell this bread can last a whole entire month without molding? It's because they're adding sugar to it, which means,
Hey, we already created this formula for this bread. What can make this bread sell a little bit faster? I know, let's just add some sugar to it.
and now the sugar makes the bread a little bit more spongy, which means what? It's gonna have a longer shelf life. But not only that, we grew up in a generation where a lot of people talk about they got celiac disease. What is celiac disease? That means the gluten inside the bread, which every single bread have, is disrupting their body so much that they can literally die eating bread. Now, the average person do not have celiac. About 1% of the population have celiac disease, right? But that's why you see a lot of companies now promote gluten-free products. Now you see gluten-free water. Yeah, because they got no bread in it. The main reason why gluten is bad for you just in the first place is the byproduct of gluten. So when you consume gluten, your body's gonna break it down to a protein called gliadin. Now this gliadin protein actually is able to disrupt the tight junctions in your body, basically what these keep your stomach intact. But when your tight junctions are getting disrupted, it's starting to separate because of a hormone called zonulin, which gliadin actually activates. So now your tight junctions is now spreading apart, and now this is allowing food particles to go into the bloodstream. Now your body already knows,
Hey, these food particles are not supposed to be in the bloodstream, so let's create antibodies.
against these food particles. Which means what? If your body creates a antibody for the food particle, anytime it sees that particle again, even if your tight junctions are sealed, now you're gonna have an adverse reaction to it. So that's why you see some people at one point in time, they was able to eat a certain food, let's say strawberries, right? They was able to eat strawberries all their life. But now for some odd reason, they get older, they can't have strawberries anymore. That's because your body created an antibody to it. And now your body's now sensitive to the strawberry, all because of how much bread you was having. Okay? So more of the story, if you're going to have some bread, make sure you get the lower carb bread. The bread that doesn't have a lot of added sugar to it. The bread that actually got more fiber to it. And all because it says wheat bread doesn't mean it's better, y'all. So actually learn how to read the label. You want to have more of those keto breads that you probably see in the store nowadays. But all because it's keto doesn't mean it's better. You just want to make sure that that net carb number is closer to 5. And net carbs is carbs minus fiber, if you didn't know. Number 2, in the same realm as bread, you want to have less pasta. If you're gonna have some pasta, especially if you're out and about, you're at your favorite Italian restaurant, you're at Maggiano's, you're at your favorite hibachi restaurant, just live your life. Because if you're having pasta, if you're having noodles, if you're having risotto, linguine, I've never seen a linguine bush before. I've never seen a spaghetti tree before. These are processed foods. But these pastas are so high glycemic that ultimately it's gonna raise your blood sugar very high. It's probably gonna raise your glucose levels higher than any other type of food. And if you don't believe me, just buy CGM, which stands for a continuous glucose monitor. But the main reason why it raises your blood glucose so high is because it lacks and is voided of fiber. The main reason why we want to have fiber with our carbs is because fiber blunts how much glucose is going to the bloodstream. Now, if you ever had an HbA1c test because you had a comprehensive metabolic panel, you probably realized that your HbA1c was probably in the range between 5 and 7. And if your HbA1c is over 5.7, that means you're in the pre-diabetic range. That means that you had so much sugar in your body that now this sugar is actually attaching itself to the red blood cells. Now, red blood cells turn over every 4 months. So if I have a HbA1c test, I literally get a snapshot of how much sugar is in my bloodstream, and my body is unable to get this sugar out of the bloodstream because maybe I'm starting to become, I don't know, insulin resistant, and it's not getting shuttled to my tissues. It's not getting shuttled to my muscles and fat cells. That now is sticking to some proteins and even to some cells that's not supposed to be sticking to. And if your cells start to get glycated, it's gonna start to become dysfunctional. Long story short, okay? So ultimately, you want to have less sugar in your bloodstream, which means you need to have less of the source that causes your glucose to raise in the first place. Pasta is one of the worst offenders. So if you're going to have some pasta, please do not have Barilla. If you are somebody that's grown up in a minority household, if you black, if you're Spanish, just minorities, we eat a lot of pasta coming from the source Barilla, the blue box. Make sure you switch over to more miracle noodles, or have more shirataki noodles, or have more konjac noodles, or have more kaizen noodles. All because it's chickpea noodles, all because it's vegetable noodles, doesn't mean it's better. Make sure you read that label. And a lot of pasta has gluten in it, which, once again, we spoke about that earlier. So more of the story, if you're going to have pasta, have less of that, especially if your goal is to lose weight. And you probably realize that every single time you have pasta, you bloat. That's your body letting you know that,
hey, we're not able to break something down, or B, hey, you're giving me something that I cannot really tolerate.
So bloating is not normal, ladies. You need to be mindful of the things that make you bloat, because that's your body letting you know that,
hey, we're not able to tolerate it, and it's really causing a havoc in your stomach.
Okay? Tip number 3, watch out for honey. Now you're probably looking at me crazy like, Trey,
hey, what do you mean honey? I heard honey is helpful.
for me, right? So yes, is honey inherently bad for you? No. But the way people use honey, and the fact that the average person does not measure out honey, that is the issue. So because we all deem honey as healthy, we think we can have as much honey as we want. It's a free-for-all when it comes to honey. That means I could just pour it on everything, right? I could pour it in my acai bowl, I could pour it in my smoothie, I could pour it on my sweet potatoes. Yet a lot of people don't know that 2 tablespoons of honey is equivalent to eating a baked potato. Exact same amount of carbs. So which one's gonna get you fuller? 2 tablespoons of honey or a baked potato? If you're trying to lose weight, the name of the game is for you to eat less, which means I need to have more foods that's gonna keep me full, which is gonna keep you fuller. A baked potato or 2 tablespoons of honey. Everybody knows it's gonna be the baked potato, but because people use honey as an addition to make it taste better, you're not taking into account of the calories and the carbs in it because you heard it is healthy, okay? At the end of the day, all because something is healthy does not mean it's gonna help you lose weight. So if you're gonna have some honey, what I would love for you to do is start measuring out. Have max 2 tablespoons of honey, and you're gonna start to realize, wow.
2 tablespoons of honey is not a lot. And I put a lot more in my acai bowl when I order it from Smoothie King or Tropical Smoothie.
Okay, so if you're gonna have some honey, ask for it on the side. Honey is not bad for you. Honey is just not gonna help you lose weight. Tip number 4, fruits. Once again, we was all taught that fruit is healthy. So people think that means I can have fruit all year round. Yet we all know that if we went a generation back, or if we went back 100 years, you're not gonna go into a store and just see a whole vast array of mangoes and pineapples and pomegranates and cherries and blueberries and strawberries and watermelon at any time you want. You can only get fruit in their season. But because we always taught that fruit is healthy, we just think, oh, we can have as much fruit as we want as our go-to snack. A lot of people don't understand that fruit got a lot of sugar in it too. So more of the story, if you're gonna have some fruit, make sure you have more fruits in their season. Make sure it has that USDA organic tag to it if you're gonna have it, okay? And also measure it out. Have more berries. Have more watermelon. We already know tropical fruits are sweet, but they're sweet for a reason. So be more mindful when it comes to that, especially if your goal is to lose weight. Because at the end of the day, sugar is sugar. Your body's gonna still receive that sugar. And just remember, carbs and sugar are the exact same thing in the human body. They're both gonna break down to glucose, which is gonna raise your glucose levels, which means your insulin levels can go up. And once insulin is up, your body literally cannot tap into its own body fat. So be mindful when it comes to your fruits. That doesn't mean you can't have it, but if you're more metabolically healthy, you can have a little bit more fruit than somebody who is trying to lose weight. And this is absolutely the number 1 worst carb on earth. Any carb that's coming in a bag, box, or barcode. Processed carbs. Your Klondike bar, or your Cliffhanger bars, or your Kind bars, or your granolas, or your dried fruits. Oh yeah, it's dried because we took the fiber out of it. Make sure you eat more of the things that doesn't have 25 different ingredients in it. So if you look at any label and you see it got more than 10 grams of added sugar to it, that is trash. That's gonna help you gain weight. You need to have more things that has some carbs in it, but also has a good amount, if not about 50 to 75% fiber in it as well. That way it can mitigate how much it's gonna raise your glucose levels. And once again, if your glucose is raising, insulin is raising. And if its insulin is raising, your body cannot tap into its own body fat. So are processed foods bad for you? Actually, yes, because majority of the processed foods, or 60 to 70% of the American food supply chain, happens to be processed with added sugars. But if you know how to read a label correctly and identify which ones can serve you more than which ones can damage you, then you're good to go. Question is, do you actually take the time to read the label? So if you're gonna have processed foods, make sure its net carbs is closer to 5, then closer to 15. And once again, if you're somebody who don't know how to find out net carbs, that is carbs minus fiber. Okay, so whatever carb number you see, let's say for your Barilla, 42, and then the fiber, 3, 42 minus 3 is 39, and the serving size is 1/8 of a box. So what does that mean? If I cook the whole entire box of pasta, which everybody does, that means 39 times 8 is over 270 grams of carbs. And last time I checked, people don't usually eat 1 time a day. So as you can see, carbs is not bad. I'm just gonna be straight up honest with you. It's the carbs that we like. The carbs that got all the added sugar to it. And that's why it tastes good. That's the problem. When people say stop having carbs, they're not talking about broccoli, which is a carb. A lot of people don't even know that. They're not talking about Brussels sprouts. They're not talking about asparagus. They're not talking about berries per se. They're talking about Doritos. They're talking about donuts. They're talking about cookies. They're talking about sweet potato pie. They're talking about ice cream. They're talking about the carbs that we hold close to our hearts because some of us are emotional eaters. And these are comfort foods. The comfort carbs. That is the issue. Because a lot of people don't know you're only supposed to be having these type of carbs if you're active. If you're somebody who lives a sedentary lifestyle, you're not supposed to be having that amount of carbs. So just to give you an idea, if you're somebody who works out less than 3 days a week, and I'm talking about you're lifting weights, and I'm talking about you're doing an intentional cardio session, not just, oh, well, I walked around Walmart today, then on average, you should have less than 100 grams of carbs. And you should have majority of carbs coming from fruits and vegetables, not starches, okay? Beans, corn, bread, rice, pasta, starches. But if you're somebody who's a little bit more active, if you're somebody that you know you work out 3 to 4 times a week and you do train with resistance and you are pushing yourself in the gym and you know you got a gym session earlier or you're about to come back from a gym session, now you can have those carbs. Now you can have them starches because all you're literally doing is regaining the glycogen that you lost. But when people start to gain weight from the carbs, that's because they're very sedentary, their body already has a threshold amount of carbs, and you're spilling over. And when you spill over your body's threshold for carbs, it's gonna immediately turn that to fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. So more to the story, if you're gonna be active that day, you are allowed to have a little bit more of that fun carbs that you like, the processed carbs or the starches. If you know you're not gonna be active, you are sitting around, you're recording videos like what I'm doing right now, then it's in your best interest to have more carbs coming from vegetables and fruits. Berries, watermelons, apples, kiwis, etc. Hopefully you're not demonizing carbs anymore. Once again, have your carbs be tethered to how active you are that day. And then you're gonna notice that the scale is dropping because you're actually not allowing the carbs to sit in your system. You're actually utilizing the carbs. Keep in mind, carbs are made to be quick energy for the body. And I'm talking about quick bursts of energy when you're working out. So if you're not working out as much, your body doesn't require that much carbs because your body can actually get some carbs or glucose from a process called gluconeogenesis, which means what? We're gonna turn this fat into carbs from the glycerol backbone. So the less active you are, the less carbs you need. The more active you are, the more carbs you need. And don't play yourself. You know if you're active or not. Cool. That's your reset tip of the day. That's gonna be Say Snatch all the time. None of sometime. Talk to you soon.